The sound cracked across Route 12 like a rifle shot swallowed by wind, and the motorcycle kicked sideways at 70 miles an hour with the kind of violence that turns a man into a smear on asphalt. Sparks erupted from the rim and a bright orange fan carving a trail across the dark highway, like a fuse burning towards something terrible. A semi behind the bike leaned on its horn, the blast so loud it seemed to press the air flat, and the rider fought the fishtail with his whole body. One boot dragging asphalt shoulders, locked hands white on the bars, holding the machine by will alone, while physics tried to kill him. Ellie Granger saw the whole thing from behind the wheel of her uncle's pickup, and for 2 full seconds she forgot to breathe. She was 17 years old, driving home from Granger Auto, with brake cleaner still drying on her knuckles. And the night had been nothing until it became everything. Route 12 after midnight belonged to long-haul trucks and people who preferred darkness. The road was a black ribbon cut through pine hills, no streetlights, no shoulders worth the name. Just a narrow strip of gravel between the white line and the grass where the land dropped away into nothing. The rider somehow kept the bike from kissing the guardrail. He muscled the Harley upright with a strength that looked personal, like the machine owed him something, and rolled it to the thin gravel margin. The motorcycle leaned on its stand chrome, catching the glow of passing headlights in brief silver pulses, and the rider stood beside it with his helmet still on tall, broad leather vest over a dark sweatshirt. He looked like he owned the night, until he shifted his weight and his left knee dipped a fraction too low. Ellie's hazards were already blinking. She pulled the pickup onto the shoulder gravel, popping under the tires, and shoved the door open. Cold wind hit her face like a slap. Traffic screamed past close enough to tug at her hoodie, and the displacement of each passing truck rocked the pickup on its springs. She grabbed the flashlight from the console and jogged toward the bike, her boots crunching on debris she could not see. The rider turned his helmet toward her. "You a cop?" "No, mechanic. Kind of." "My tire blew," the man said, as if she had not just watched it detonate from 50 yards back. "No kidding," Ellie muttered, then caught herself. "I'm Ellie. You got a name?" A pause that lasted one breath too long. "Hawk." Ellie crouched and swept the beam along shredded rubber. Black ribbons of tire hung from the rim like dead skin. Bright scrape marks gouged the metal where it had dragged. She scanned the lane behind them, expecting to find a chunk of road debris, a nail strip, anything that would explain the violence. Nothing visible. "You hit something?" she asked. "Felt like it," Hawk said. Then it let go. Ellie's light dipped to his leg again. The man kept it stiff, jaw tight behind the visor, breathing shallow through his nose. Pain management. She recognized it because Walt did the same thing when his back seized up and he refused to sit down. "You should sit," she said. "I'm fine." "You're not," Ellie said. "And if you go down out here, you're going under somebody's trailer." Hawk did not answer, but his gloved hands tremored once on the handlebars before he gripped harder. The tell of a man holding himself together by friction. "You got tools," he snapped. "Or you just here to lecture?" Ellie jogged back to the truck bed and pulled out her highway kit, a scissor jack with a squeaky crank, a plug-and-patch set she had bought with her last cash, a portable compressor that sounded terminal every time it ran. 2 plugs left in the kit. That was it. She set everything beside the bike and knelt on gravel that bit through her jeans. Hawk glanced at the pickup, at the tools, at the girl arranging them with the efficiency of someone who had done this before and did not have time to be impressed by herself. "You carry all that around?" "Yeah, Uncle Walt calls it my bad decision box." "Walt, your boss, my uncle, it's his shop." "How old are you?" Hawk asked, watching her. 17. Hawk let out a low sound that lived somewhere between disbelief and something softer. 17, and you pull over for strangers on Route 12. Ellie shrugged without looking up. "Either I do or I keep driving and pretend I didn't see you almost die." She slid the jack under the frame. "Hold the bars. Keep it steady." Hawk gripped the handlebars. Ellie cranked the jack. The bike lifted slow and heavy, and the shoulder suddenly felt even narrower, the gravel strip a tightrope between the white line and the dark. A pickup blasted past close enough to spray them with grit. The Harley rocked on the jack. Then a semi roared by, and the windblast hit like a wave from the ocean, and the bike swayed hard. Ellie lunged, palms flat against the frame, catching it before it tipped. Hawk locked his arms and held. For a second, both of them just breathed. While Ellie worked, Hawk shifted his weight and hissed through his teeth. Small, almost nothing, but she caught it the way you catch a wrong note in a song you know by heart. "You're not fine," she said again. "Just hurry." She did not argue. Arguing on a highway shoulder was how people died. She moved faster fingers, finding bolts by field tools, clinking against each other, eyes flicking to the side mirrors of passing cars that reflected her flashlight back like animal eyes. A tow truck rolled by in the right lane. Slow, deliberate. The driver's face turned toward them, lit by the glow of his dash, and Ellie saw him see them. Saw the moment of recognition or calculation or whatever lived behind those eyes. The truck did not stop. It did not tap its brakes. It just kept going steady like it had already decided this was not its problem. Ellie watched it disappear and felt something tighten in her gut. In town, tow trucks showed up for everything. Fast sometimes. Too fast. She shook it off and got the wheel loose enough to access the puncture. The tire was tubeless, torn along the sidewall, but the puncture point was clean. One neat hole. Ellie frowned. That was not what a random blowout looked like. She swept the light along the inside of the rubber and found it embedded deep. A thin galvanized roofing nail, long sharp, the kind sold in 50-pound buckets at contractor supply stores. She pried it out with pliers, then swept the shoulder and found a second nail glittering near the grass like a small, cruel tooth. When she pulled the first nail free, Hawk leaned forward like the pain or the sight of it hit him at the same time. His bad leg slipped, boot skidding on gravel, and Ellie shot out an arm and caught him by the vest before he could drop. For 1 second, she felt how heavy he was, solid adult weight that would crush her if it went wrong. Hawk yanked himself upright instantly. Embarrassment flashed through his body language, even with the helmet hiding his face. "Let go," he growled. Ellie released him, hands up. "Fine, don't fall on me. I'm not built for that." She pocketed both nails before she could talk herself out of it. Hawk noticed. "What's that, nails?" she said. "One was in your tire." "So it fell off a truck." "Or somebody tossed them," Ellie said, keeping her voice low. "Either way, it's not normal." Hawk went still, staring down the dark highway like it might answer him. Then he looked back at her. "Fix it." Ellie focused on the puncture. She roughed the spot, applied cement, waited through the longest 30 seconds of her life as headlights washed over them in rhythmic waves. Then she pressed the plug in hard until her thumbs ached. "Where'd you learn?" Hawk asked. "My uncle's shop, Granger Auto Mill Road." Hawk's helmet lifted slightly like he filed that away. Ellie receded, the tire tightened, everything clipped, the compressor to the valve, and held the rattling machine down until the tire firmed up. She lowered the bike and spun the wheel. It turned true. "Good enough to get off Route 12, she said. "Not good enough to ride like nothing happened. You need a replacement. Check your other tires too." Hawk swung a leg over the seat carefully, and that was when Ellie saw the back of his vest. An emblem half-dusted with road grime. An iron hawk with wings spread wide, stitched in white thread on black leather. Iron hawks. Ellie's hands went still at her sides. Hawk caught her staring. "You know who we are." "I know how to read," she said. He reached into his vest and pulled out a thick wallet, peeled a bill and held it toward her. His hand hovered between them. "Nobody does this for free." Ellie looked at the pouch in her kit where the plugs were kept. One slot empty now. "I just burned my last decent plug," she said. "So trust me, I'm aware it's not smart." "Then why?" Ellie's jaw tightened. "Because leaving you here would be worse." The bill hovered. "Take it." "I'm not taking your money. You saved my bike." "I plugged a tire," she said. "That's it." Hawk's voice dropped rough as gravel. "You don't know who I am." Ellie met the visor. "I know you're hurt, and I know you almost died out here. Tonight already took enough." Hawk went rigid. Then slowly he pulled the bill back and tucked it away. "All right," he said. "Then I owe you." "You don't." He stared at her like he had never heard someone refuse him without fear. "What's your full name?" he asked. "Ellie Granger." "Granger," he repeated, once low-tasting the word. He reached down and wiped grime off the side panel with 2 fingers. Underneath was a small service decal, partly scratched, but readable. Granger Auto Mill Road. The sticker had a crooked edge. Ellie knew that edge. Walt printed them on cheap paper, cut them with a box cutter, and stuck them on with thumbs that always left a smudged corner. Hawk nodded like the decal confirmed something. Mill Road, he said again. One bay shop. Ellie's voice tightened. Yeah. He started the engine. The Harley's rumble sank into her chest like a second heartbeat. He rolled forward a few feet, then stopped and looked back. His visor lifted just enough for her to see his eyes. Cold, steady measuring. Kid, he said, voice carried by the engine's growl. You didn't take my money. No. Hawk dipped his head once. Then I'll pay you another way. He twisted the throttle and merged into traffic, disappearing into the dark like he had never been there. Ellie stood alone on the shoulder with her kit one plug, left in the pouch nails, cold in her pocket, ears ringing in the sudden quiet. And far down the highway, so low she felt it more than heard it, another engine answered back. She did not tell Walt about the nails right away. She drove home with them, digging into her pocket radio, off shoulders tight, every time headlights swept the rearview mirror. Granger Auto sat off Mill Road in a neighborhood that was not quite a neighborhood, just a cluster of small properties connected by cracked pavement and the shared understanding that nobody here had anywhere better to go. One bay, a half-dead neon sign, a gravel yard full of oil stains that mapped the history of every car they had ever saved. Hawk's voice kept replaying in her head like a faulty starter. Then I'll pay you another way. Walt was still up when she came in. Kitchen table covered in invoices. Cold coffee going black in the mug. The wall clock ticking into the silence like a metronome for a song nobody wanted to sing. Walt Granger was 58 years old, built like a man who had spent 30 years lifting engines and carrying grief in equal measure. His brother Ellie's father had died on a construction site when Ellie was 9. A scaffold collapsed. The company settled out of court for an amount that sounded large until lawyers and medical bills ate it alive, and what remained was a girl who knew how to hold a wrench before she knew how to hold a conversation. Walt had taken Ellie in, without a word, the way he did everything important. He quit a steady job at a dealership, sank what money he had into the one-bay shop, and built a life out of brake fluid and stubbornness. He never complained about it. He never said it was hard. But Ellie saw the invoices spread across the table every night. The pen that tapped once and then stopped the coffee that went cold because he forgot to drink it while he was calculating how many days they had until something broke that they could not fix. You're late, he said without looking up. Ellie set her kit down. I stopped on Route 12. Walt looked up fast. Stopped how? There was a biker. Tire blew. He was going to get killed. Walt's face hardened the way it did when fear and pride collided. And you pulled over. I fixed it, Ellie said, enough to limp him off the shoulder. Walt pushed back from the table. Ellie, people get swallowed out there. I watched him almost go under a semi, she said. I couldn't just drive off. Walt held her eyes, then exhaled through his nose, the way he did when he was trying not to yell, because yelling meant he cared and caring meant he was afraid, and fear was something Walt Granger processed internally, like an engine running hot with no gauge to warn anyone. Did you give him our name? No, he saw the sticker. Walt's jaw tightened. What sticker? Ellie pulled the 2 roofing nails from her pocket and set them on the table. They looked small under the kitchen light. Their thin shadows stretched across the invoices like the legs of insects. Walt picked one up and rolled it between his fingers. Where'd these come from? His tire in the shoulder. It wasn't a normal blowout. Walt's stare sharpened. You sure? One clean hole now buried deep, Ellie said, like it was meant to happen. Walt went quiet. He looked at the nail again, then at Ellie like he was seeing her for the first time as someone who could be a target instead of just a kid who was good with tools. Who was he? Walt asked. Iron Hawks. Walt's expression closed like a door being locked from inside. You take money from him? No. Walt's shoulders dropped a fraction. Relief and dread at the same time in the same breath. He set the nail down carefully like it might grow teeth. Go sleep, he said. We'll deal with whatever comes in the morning. Ellie tried. She lay on the couch with her hoodie still on, staring at the ceiling where a water stain shaped like a fist had been spreading for 2 years. Outside the shop yard creaked and settled the way old places do when the temperature drops and every small sound made her heart jump. She thought about the scholarship application sitting in a folder on the kitchen table. A technical program at a state school. Full ride if she got it. The one door she had found that led somewhere other than Mill Road. She finally slipped under not because she felt safe, but because her body quit. At 5:18 a.m., the floor vibrated. Ellie's eyes snapped open to a low, rolling hum that came from everywhere at once. Engines, not one, not 10, layered together until the air itself felt like a living thing. It was not coming from a single direction. It was surrounding them, approaching in a wide sweep that made the walls hum and the dishes rattle softly in the cupboard. Walt was already at the door. When he opened it, cold dawn air rushed in, carrying the rumble straight into Ellie's chest and the smell of exhaust into the kitchen. Mill Road was full. Headlights stretched through the morning fog and rose two by two. Bikes idling tight along the curb and down the street, chrome and black paint catching the thin gray light. Leather vests, helmets, a few bare faces, hard and quiet. Not a party, a formation. And they were not scattered. They were organized, leaving driveways clear, keeping off lawns, spacing just enough for emergency vehicles to squeeze through. That was not an accident. That was discipline. Ellie's fingers curled against the doorframe. For a second, she could not move, like her body had decided this was a dream and motion would make it real. Walt stepped down from the porch, hands open, moving only far enough to plant himself between the house and the shop. Ellie grabbed his sleeve. "Uncle Walt." "Stay back," he said, voice low. Across the street, porch lights snapped on. A woman in a bathrobe stepped out, clutching a phone, eyes wide. Someone shouted from down the block, "Y'all better not bring that mess here." The answer was nothing but idling engines. Ellie's own phone lit up. 3 messages from a group chat she did not care about. Someone had already filmed the street from a window and posted it. The caption was 2 words, Granger Auto. She turned the screen off, hands shaking. A rider eased out from the front line and rolled into the yard entrance, stopping short of the property line like it mattered. He killed the engine and lifted his visor. Not Hawk. Older, pale eyes, calm in a way that made Ellie's skin tighten because it was not performative. It looked practiced. Like calm was something this man had built over decades and now wore like armor. "Morning," the man said. Walt did not return the greeting. "What do you want?" The man's gaze slid past Walt and fixed on Ellie. "I'm here for Ellie Granger." Ellie's chest clenched. Walt's voice went sharp. "She's 17. The man nodded once. "Name's Briggs, Iron Hawks." Behind him, the road was a wall of motorcycles. Ellie noticed how many vests carried the same emblem. Iron Hawk with wings spread wide. Some had extra bars stitched underneath, names, numbers, roles she did not understand. But she understood the weight of all of them being here for one girl with grease under her nails. Briggs kept his hands visible. "Your niece helped one of ours last night. Route 12, plugged a tire on the shoulder and refused payment." Walt's mouth tightened. "That doesn't buy you the right to show up like this." "It doesn't," Briggs said evenly. "We didn't come to threaten her." Ellie's eyes searched the line until she found Hawk's Harley near the front. Hawk stood beside it, helmet off, now left leg stiff, jaw set. When his eyes met Ellie's, he did not nod. He did not smile. He just watched, like he was making sure the kid did not walk into traffic again. Walt noticed Ellie looking and shifted his body, blocking her view on purpose. "If you want to thank her," Walt said, "you can do it and then leave." Briggs's attention stayed on Ellie. "We need to talk somewhere that isn't a porch." Walt shook his head. "About what?" Briggs's eyes did not blink. "About why a bike blows out on a clean stretch of highway. About nails that don't fall from the skyline." Ellie felt her pocket go hot, like the nails were burning through denim. A younger Hawk, maybe mid-20s, started to step forward with his mouth opening. Briggs lifted one finger. The younger man stopped immediately and stepped back into line. No ego, no defiance. Obedience. Whatever this was, it was not chaos. Before Ellie could speak, sirens cut through the morning. Sharp rising coming fast. Walt muttered something under his breath. Briggs did not flinch. He just listened, head tilted slightly, like he was counting distance. A patrol car barreled into view and braked at the end of the line of bikes, lights washing the fog, blue and red. 2 more cruisers stacked behind it. A 4th slid into the intersection, blocking the road like a lid. Doors slammed. Deputies stepped out with hands hovering near their belts, eyes wide, as they took in the sheer number of riders. Sheriff Vernon Denton climbed out of the lead car and adjusted his hat like he was preparing for a camera that was not there yet. He scanned the street, then his gaze snapped to the Granger Auto sign, then to Ellie. Something cold moved through Ellie's chest. Denton had been in their shop before. smiling while he warned Walt about permits and inspections the way certain men smile when they are reminding you that your survival depends on their mood. Denton walked to the first row of bikes and stopped keeping distance while trying to project control. "What's going on here?" he called, voice pitched for the whole street. "This isn't a rally ground." Briggs stepped forward one pace. "Morning, Sheriff." Denton's eyes narrowed. "You can't block a residential road." "We'll clear it when we're done," Briggs said. "We're here to speak to the girl, respectfully." Denton's smile was thin as paper. "Respectfully," he repeated, like the word tasted of something spoiled. He waved at his deputies. "Start writing. Plates, names, anything you can get." A deputy took 2 steps toward the nearest bike and then hesitated as 50 heads turned toward him at once. Not hostile, not threatening, just aware. The deputy stopped moving. Denton saw it, and his irritation sharpened into something personal. He took a few steps closer, stopping at the edge of the yard so everyone could see he was not afraid. His gaze snapped to Ellie. "Ellie Granger." Walt started to speak. Denton cut him off with a raised hand, still not looking at Walt. "I'm not talking to you." Hawk shifted near his bike and took 1 step forward. A few deputies stiffened. Briggs lifted 2 fingers without looking back. Hawk stopped. Denton noticed, his jaw tightened. "You got a lot of company for a kid who can't keep her nose clean," Denton said, voice pitched for the neighbors and the phones already recording from porches. Briggs's voice stayed calm. "She helped a stranded rider." Oh, Denton ignored him and locked eyes with Ellie. "You're going to step off that porch and come talk to me. Right now, alone." Briggs said, "She won't be alone." Denton snapped his head toward Briggs. "This isn't your town." Briggs did not raise his voice. "It's her life." Denton's hand drifted toward his belt. Reflex, intimidation, habit. "I can shut this place down today," he said, eyes on the Granger auto sign. "Permits safety zoning." "You think one-bay garages stay open by luck?" Walt's knuckles went white. "Sheriff, we're in compliance." Denton finally looked at Walt, and the smile that came with it was worse than anger. "Walt Granger," he said like the name belonged to him. "You sure you want to argue compliance with me?" Walt's mouth shut. Denton pointed directly at Ellie like she was already guilty. "Get down here," he said. "Now." Ellie's feet did not move. She felt every eye on Mill Road shift toward her. Neighbors, deputies, hundreds of riders who did not say a word yet, somehow made the air heavier. Denton's finger stayed aimed at her like it could pin her in place. Walt stepped forward, half a step. "Vernon, she's a kid. Whatever you think is happening." Denton's head snapped. "You're done, Walt." Walt's face tightened, but he held his ground. "She patched a tire." "That's it." Denton smiled without warmth. "That's never it. Not when these people show up at your front door." Briggs did not move closer, did not raise his voice. "Sheriff, nobody's here to cause trouble. We're going to speak with Ellie and leave." Denton's eyes tracked to Briggs slowly, the way a man looks at something he is deciding how to break. "Speak. Here's what I'll allow. You can disperse right now, and then I'll speak with Ellie." Briggs's tone stayed even. "You don't get to isolate a minor in front of a crowd you're trying to provoke." A deputy at Denton's shoulder muttered, "Sheriff," and got silenced by a look. Denton turned back to Ellie. "Last chance, kid. Step down." Ellie's legs felt like they belonged to someone else. If she stayed on the porch, Denton would use it as defiance. If she stepped down alone, Denton would own the narrative by lunchtime. She could hear her own heartbeat competing with the idling engines. Walt leaned in, barely moving his lips. "Don't say anything you don't have to. Keep it simple." Ellie forced herself to breathe. Then she did the only thing that did not feel like surrender. She stepped off the porch. 1 step, then another. But she did not walk to Denton. She walked toward the shop. Denton's voice snapped. "Where do you think you're going?" She did not turn around. "To my uncle's property," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You want to talk? Talk here." Denton started forward, then stopped when he saw Briggs shift 1 foot. Subtle, not aggressive, but enough to make Denton remember there were a lot of witnesses. Ellie reached the shop door, pulled it open, and stepped inside. The air smelled like oil and old rubber, familiar enough that she could breathe again. Walt followed immediately. Briggs did not follow. He stayed outside on the gravel where the deputies could see his hands, where Denton could not later claim that he stormed private property. Denton marched to the threshold like the doorway was a line in a war. This is a place of business, he said. You open right now, Walt said. We're not open. Denton's eyes slid over the shop. The single bay, the scattered tools, the parts shelves, the old computer on the desk that froze twice a day. Then his gaze landed on the inspection stickers and the license placard hanging near the register like a fragile shield. Funny, Denton said, because I'm looking at a business that should have been shut down last year. Walt's nostrils flared. We passed inspection. Denton's grin widened by a millimeter. You passed because I let you pass. You think you're entitled to keep running just because you're barely scraping by. Ellie felt something hot crawl up her neck. Walt's hand came up, warning her to stay quiet. Denton's eyes locked on Ellie. What did you do last night? I plugged a tire, Ellie said. Whose tire? A rider's, stranded on Route 12. Denton's gaze flicked to the shop sign through the open bay door. And you just happened to help an Iron Hawk. Ellie kept her face neutral. He was a person with a blown tire. Denton leaned in slightly, voice lowering into something meant to feel private. You know what happens to shops that get tied up with outlaw groups? Walt snapped, don't. Denton cut him off with a look. I can have your permits reviewed. I can have OSHA out here sniffing. I can have fire code inspectors by noon. And if I find one violation, this place is done. Well, the air left Ellie's lungs. She had grown up hearing that threat in the silences between Walt's invoice sessions. It had never been spoken this clearly. It had always been implied like weather. Denton continued, soft as a blade. So you're going to tell me what they asked you for, and you're going to do it now. Ellie forced her hands to unclench. They haven't asked me for anything. Denton's eyes narrowed. Don't play stupid. A faint click came from outside, the unmistakable sound of a phone camera beginning to record. Denton's head jerked toward the door. A young hawk stood 20 feet away with a phone held chest high, not shoving it in anyone's face, just documenting. Briggs's voice carried from outside, calm and audible. Sheriff Denton, for everyone's clarity, are you threatening to close this business unless Ellie answers questions? Denton's head snapped. This is an active situation. Briggs said, answer the question. The neighbors had started drifting closer, keeping distance, but present, peeking from behind mailboxes and porch rails. The deputies, some of them, were looking at Denton differently now, like they were hearing what this town had been trained not to notice. Denton's face hardened. I'm not threatening anything, he said loudly. I'm enforcing the law. Briggs replied, then enforce it properly. Ask questions without coercion. This kid has a guardian present. Walt's voice came out tight. Ellie doesn't answer without me. Denton stared at Walt, then at Ellie, and Ellie saw it. Denton did not care about the truth. He cared about control, about sending a message to anyone who thought they could exist in his town without his permission. Ellie's eyes flicked to the desk, to the drawer where Walt kept paperwork. In that drawer were copies of permits, the inspection report, the receipts, the thin evidence of survival. Denton followed her glance, and the corner of his mouth lifted. Nervous about your paperwork, Ellie? Ellie forced herself to look back at him. I'm nervous about you making things up. The temperature in the room dropped. Walt inhaled sharply. Denton's expression flattened. Careful, Denton said. Outside engines continued to idle, patient and steady. Not revving, not performing, just waiting. Briggs's voice stayed level. Sheriff, if you have probable cause, present it. If you don't, you're harassing a family business. Denton stepped into the doorway and raised his voice for everyone. Probable cause, he echoed. Here's probable cause. 500 motorcycles parked outside a shop that barely pays taxes. Briggs did not take the bait. That's not probable cause. That's optics. And optics don't justify intimidation. Denton's gaze slid back to Ellie, colder now. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You're going to tell them to leave. Then you're going to come down to the station later today and give a statement. If you don't, we start inspections. We start audits. We start asking why a 17-year-old girl is out on Route 12 at midnight. Walt said, she works for me. Denton's eyes glittered. Oh, I know. And I know about the cash jobs you take when people can't afford receipts. Walt's face flashed shock, then rage. Ellie's pulse hammered. Denton was not guessing. He was reciting. He had been watching them for a long time. Briggs said from outside, you're admitting you have been surveilling this family. Denton snapped, shut up. Then from the front line of bikes, a voice Ellie recognized cut through the air. Low, rough, and angry in a way that did not need volume. That's enough. Hawk limped into view, moving past the rows with that stiff left leg like it did not matter. When he reached Briggs, he stopped. Briggs did not look surprised. He just turned his head slightly as if allowing Hawk to speak. Hawk's eyes locked on Denton. "Kid plugged my tire," he said, loud enough for everyone. "She didn't ask for my name, didn't ask for anything. She refused payment." Denton's lip curled. "And you want a medal for letting her live?" Hawk's expression did not change, but the muscles in his neck flexed. "I want you to stop threatening her." Denton laughed once sharp and ugly. "You don't get to tell me what to do in my county." Hawk took one step closer, slow, controlled. "Then do your job." Denton's deputies shifted. One of them, older, tired eyes, looked from Denton to Hawk to the phone recording and looked like he wished he were anywhere else. Briggs raised his voice slightly, still calm. "Sheriff Denton, we're leaving soon. But before we do, we're going to make something clear on record. Ellie Granger performed a roadside repair. That's it. If any retaliation comes to her shop, permits, inspections, harassment, people will ask why." Denton's face reddened. "People," Briggs glanced at the line of bikes, then at the neighbors, then at the phones. "The public." Denton's eyes flicked to Ellie with something close to a promise. "You just made yourself a problem," he said. And in that exact moment, Ellie's phone buzzed. Not a group chat, not a friend, an unknown number, local, 2 words, all caps. "Stop talking." Something cold locked around Ellie's spine, because the message was not from Hawk. It was not from any number she had ever seen. It was from someone close enough to have her phone number, close enough to be watching, close enough to be real. She did not show the text to anyone at first. 2 words, no punctuation, no explanation. Like the sender did not care if she understood, only that she obeyed. Walt saw her face change. "What is it?" She shoved the phone deeper into her pocket. "Nothing." Walt's eyebrows lifted, but he did not push. Not with Denton in the doorway and a street full of engines and phones recording everything that moved. Briggs's voice carried again, steady, clear. "Sheriff Denton, we're going to speak with Ellie for a few minutes. Then we'll clear the road. You'll have no excuse to escalate." Denton's eyes narrowed. "Speak where?" Briggs nodded toward the shop yard. "Right there in the open, where your deputies can see our hands, where the neighbors can see. No intimidation." Denton's smile returned thin as fishing line. "And if I say no, Briggs did not react. "Then you'll be on camera refusing a minor the right to speak to people without coercion. Your choice, Uwama." For a second, Denton looked like a man swallowing something sharp. Then he tipped his head toward a deputy. "Fine," he spat, "but I'm staying, and they're leaving when I say." Briggs's tone did not change. "We're leaving when we're done." Denton stepped back from the threshold like he was granting permission instead of losing a grip. Ellie and Walt walked out together. The morning had brightened just enough to show faces in windows, phones held up behind curtains, the shape of a town watching, without participating the way it always had. Briggs stopped at the edge of the gravel. Hawk stood a few feet behind him, weight off his bad leg. A younger Hawk, clean-cut, quiet, stayed to Briggs's right with a small notebook. Not a weapon, a record. Briggs looked at Ellie first, not Walt. "You did a good thing last night." Ellie tried to keep her voice neutral. "I fixed a tire." Briggs nodded like he accepted the correction. "Hawk told me you found nails." Ellie's body went rigid. Walt's head snapped toward her. "You found nails." Her jaw locked. Walt had told her to keep it simple. The text burned in her pocket like a brand. Briggs watched her hesitation, and something in his eyes sharpened. Not aggressive, alert. "You don't have to answer if you feel unsafe," he said. "But if there were nails, we need to know." Denton, standing near his cruiser, called out, This is what I'm talking about. They're recruiting her into their nonsense." Briggs did not look at Denton. He looked at Ellie. "We've had 6 incidents in 3 weeks," he said, voice low enough that it felt private without being secret. "Rear tire failures, clean punctures, always the same stretch, too consistent to be chance." Walt muttered 6. Hawk spoke for the first time since the text. "One of ours went down hard last week, broke his collarbone. Another guy lost 2 fingers trying to control the skid. Same kind of puncture, same kind of nail." Ellie felt her mouth go numb. Roofing nails, she said before she could stop herself. Walt stared at her. Ellie, she forced herself to keep going because now she saw the shape of it. Not random, not bad luck. Briggs's eyes did not blink. Roofing nails. You sure? Ellie nodded once. Long, thin, galvanized, not the short ones people drop from gutters. The hole in the tire was clean. Hawk's jaw tightened. Clean. Walt exhaled through his nose. That's not a blowout. No, Ellie said. It's a puncture that turns into a blowout if you don't catch it in time. Briggs continued. Hawk rides tubeless tires. You said you plugged it. Ellie blinked at the precision of the question, then nodded. I used a plug kit, worked fast on the shoulder. I called it a patch when I talked to Walt, but it was a plug. Briggs nodded once, satisfied, not judging, verifying. Walt leaned closer, voice tight. You should have told me about the nails. Ellie's eyes flicked toward Denton and the deputies. I didn't want this. Briggs's gaze followed her glance. You got the nails. Hawk leaned in slightly, voice low. Kid, look at me. Ellie looked up. Hawk's eyes were steady, not cold anymore, focused. That text you got, Hawk said quietly, almost like he already knew. It wasn't from us. Ellie's blood turned to ice. How do you? Because we don't hide behind numbers, and because somebody else wants you quiet. Ellie's fingers curled around the nails in her pocket. She glanced at Walt. Walt's face had shifted from anger to fear. Briggs did not ask to see the phone. He simply nodded like the last piece had clicked into place. Okay, Briggs said. Then we do this clean. He gestured gently. Ellie, show me the nails, not as evidence for the sheriff, as evidence for us. We're not giving Denton anything he can twist. Denton shouted from across the yard. I heard that. You're withholding evidence. Briggs turned his head just enough to address Denton without moving closer. It's not your case unless you open one. You haven't. All you've done is threaten a family business. Denton's face flushed. He strode forward 2 steps, boots crunching gravel. You think you're clever? I can get a warrant. For what? Briggs asked, still calm. A roofing nail. For obstruction, for aiding. Sheriff, Walt blurted, voice rough. This is my shop. You want a warrant? Go get one. Denton froze, surprised that Walt had found a spine. Ellie did it fast before she could lose the nerve. She pulled the nails out and placed them in Briggs's open palm. They looked smaller in daylight, more ordinary, which made them more terrifying because ordinary meant easy. Briggs did not pocket them. He held them up at chest height, where the porch cameras could see. Then he lowered them and handed them to the younger Hawk with the notebook. Photograph, Briggs said. Bag. Mark location and time. The younger Hawk did exactly that with practiced speed. Gloves on evidence bag, outnotes, written. Not biker chaos. Procedure. Denton saw it and his expression changed. He did not like procedure he could not control. Hawk's voice dropped low. Now you understand why we're here at dawn. Ellie's hands curled into fists at her sides. Why does it matter to you so much? Hawk's gaze went distant for a second, looking at asphalt and blood that were not here. Because it's not just us, he said. It's everyone who drives that road. Families, kids, people who don't have 500 friends on bikes. Briggs looked at Ellie. We think someone is planting debris to force breakdowns, and we think the ones profiting are local. Ellie felt Walt stiffen beside her. Briggs continued, we don't need you to be one of us. We need you to be what you already are, someone who notices what others miss. Denton snapped from the edge of the yard. This is intimidation. All of it. Briggs finally turned fully toward Denton. No, he said. This is accountability. And you're nervous because you don't know who's watching. A notification pulsed against Ellie's thigh. She did not want to look. She looked anyway. A picture this time. Granger Auto, taken from across the street. The same angle a neighbor would have if they stood on the opposite sidewalk. Except the shot was too clean, too centered, like the person who took it was not hiding. Beneath the photo, one line, we're already here. Her vision narrowed. She looked up, scanning porches, parked cars, the foggy edges of the street. Everyone looked like everyone. That was the point. Walt's voice came out low. Who's texting you? Ellie could not answer. Not with Denton's deputies close enough to read lips. Not with phones recording from curtains. Briggs noticed her face. He did not ask to see the phone. He just shifted his stance a few inches, blocking Ellie from Denton's line of sight without making it obvious. Hawk leaned in, barely moving his mouth. Don't show that to the sheriff. Ellie's fingers went white around the phone. They're across the street. Hawk's gaze flicked left-right, then settled in a way that made her skin prickle. Yeah, Hawk muttered. I know. Briggs spoke just loud enough for Ellie and Walt. We clear the road now, he said, but not because Denton told us to. Briggs raised a hand, 2 fingers, and the line of bikes responded like a single organism. Engines shut off in waves. Riders lifted stands. Helmets went on. The sound did not fade like a crowd leaving. It tightened into a controlled departure. Neighbors watched with phones half raised, confused, because nothing about it looked like a threat anymore. It looked like a procession, and that made it scarier. Hawk did not move with the first group. He stayed. So did 3 others. Denton noticed and stepped forward. All of you go. Briggs's eyes stayed level. 4 of us remain. A walk and talk for 60 seconds on foot on private property. Then we leave. Denton glanced at the phones and windows and forced himself to swallow his pride visibly. Fine. 60 seconds. Briggs turned slightly, shielding Ellie, Walt, and Hawk from the street. Ellie, you said roofing nails, galvanized, long. That kind doesn't get spilled by accident. It gets carried in bulk. Walt muttered, plenty of contractors around here. Hawk's jaw tightened. Not all of them drive Route 12 at night. Ellie's mind snapped to something she had not wanted to admit. Tow trucks, she said. Walt looked at her sharply. What? A tow truck passed us last night. Slow, like he was watching. Briggs's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Company name. Ellie shook her head. Too dark. I only saw the driver's face. Hawk's voice dropped. Describe. Ellie did. White guy, beard, baseball cap. He did not stop. He just looked. Walt exhaled like he had been punched. Denton's cousin drives for his towing company. Ellie stared. Denton's towing, Walt's mouth tightened. He doesn't advertise it, but everybody knows. Denton's brother-in-law, Barrett Toomey, runs the yard. They've had the county contract for years. Ellie felt the pieces locked together so hard it was almost loud. Nails on Route 12. Breakdowns. Tow trucks arriving fast. Shops like Granger Auto getting squeezed while towing yards got fed. Briggs simply asked, where do those roofing nails come from in this town? Ellie's brain flipped through memory. Roofing supply, hardware stores, contractors. Then something surfaced. The only supplier that stocked that exact long galvanized type in bulk. Walt had sent Ellie there twice for shop repairs. Harrington Supply, Ellie said. They're the only place that keeps those nails in the big contractor buckets. I remember because I dropped one and it went through my shoe. Briggs nodded once. We'll verify. Hawk shifted his weight, face tightening with pain. He reached into his vest and pulled out a small, folded paper. Not money, a card. He held it toward Ellie. On it was a simple phone number. No logo, just ink. All that if anything feels wrong, Hawk said. Not the sheriff, not your friends, that number. Ellie stared at the card. Who is it? Hawk's eyes did not blink. Someone who answers. Walt's voice came tight. We don't want trouble. Briggs said, then don't let trouble pick you. Denton's voice cut in from the yard edge. Time. Briggs lifted his chin. Last thing, he told Ellie. Those texts, don't reply, don't block. Don't show Denton, save everything. Hawk leaned closer and the words came out like a warning wrapped in respect. You did a good thing last night, but somebody else saw it as a problem. He stepped back, swung onto his bike carefully, and his eyes locked on Ellie one more time. If you want to stay safe, he said, don't be brave in the wrong direction. The last remaining Hawks started their engines and rolled out, controlled steady, the low rumble sinking into the earth until the street went quiet. And when the last taillight disappeared, Mill Road felt naked. Denton waited until every bike was gone. Then he walked straight into the yard like he had been waiting for this moment all morning. His deputies followed. His expression returned, thin, patient, the look of a man who knew that witnesses leave, but power stays. Now, Denton said, voice dropped just for Ellie and Walt. We can have our conversation without your little audience. Walt's fists clenched. We're done talking. Denton's eyes flicked to the shop sign, then to Ellie's pocket. You're not even close. He nodded toward the road. A tow truck was turning onto Mill Road. Slow, deliberate. White cab, blue lettering on the door, Denton, Towing and Recovery. The driver wore a baseball cap pulled low and his eyes cut straight to Granger Auto without blinking. The screen in Ellie's pocket lit up. One new message from the unknown number. Towing's here to collect. The tow truck crawled down Mill Road like it was on a parade route. Not rushing, not searching, just arriving slow enough that everyone on every porch could see the blue lettering on the door. Walt stepped forward. "Why is your tow truck here?" Denton tilted his head like Walt had asked something beneath him. "Because I got a call, anonymous, about illegal activity." Ellie felt her heartbeat slam behind her ribs. The text in her pocket had not been a prediction. It had been a schedule. Walt's voice went sharp. "Illegal activity at 5 in the morning." Denton's lips twitched. "That's when criminals work." Walt took a step closer. "This is harassment." Denton leaned in just enough that only Walt and Ellie would hear. "This is me protecting my town from your niece making friends she can't afford." Ellie could not stay silent anymore. "I patched a tire." Denton's eyes snapped to her. "You did more than that. You put yourself in their pocket. And now you're going to learn what that is." The tow driver hopped down from the cab and walked over with a clipboard like he was picking up groceries. He looked past Walt through the open bay door, eyes scanning the shop like he already had a list. Denton's voice carried for the neighbors. "Fire marshal's coming later. County inspector too. Full review. If anything in this shop isn't by the book, anything, you're shut down." Walt's face went pale. Not because the shop was a criminal operation. Because small shops did not survive on perfect paperwork. They survived on making rent, on fixing cars for cash when people could not afford invoices. Denton did not need to find a violation. He could create one. He could bury them in process until the doors never opened again. Denton's grin returned. "I'm doing this because you're out of control." Walt spoke through his teeth. "Get off my property." Denton did not move. "You'll let my men inspect what I tell them to inspect." But Walt said, "No warrant." Denton's eyes hardened. "Fine, I can wait. I can get a judge out of bed. And while I'm waiting, I can park that tow truck right out front and write down your customers as they come and go. I can make sure nobody wants to be seen here." He raised his voice. "Ellie Granger, you're coming to the station today. 10 a.m. You'll give a statement about what you saw on Route 12. I didn't see anything." Denton's expression turned cruel. "Sure you did, and you're going to tell me who else was there." Walt snapped, "No." Denton's eyes flicked between them. "Fine, then I'll talk to her at school." Ellie froze. "I'll walk right into that campus," Denton said loud and clean, "and I'll ask questions in front of teachers, in front of friends. I'll make sure everybody knows what kind of people you've been mixed up with, Ellie." Something twisted inside her. Fear, yes, but also anger so sharp it tasted metallic. Denton was not just threatening a shop. He was threatening her future, the technical scholarship application, the chance to get off Mill Road without crawling. Denton knew that. Her phone jumped with a rapid burst of vibrations. She pulled it out just enough to see the screen. "Your school's next." The sender was not talking about rumors. They were promising a scene. Ellie shoved the phone away and stepped forward. "Sheriff, don't go to my school." Denton's eyes narrowed. "Then come talk like a grown woman." Every instinct screamed at her not to give Denton control. Hawk's warning echoed. Don't be brave in the wrong direction. But Ellie understood something new. Staying silent was not safety. It was permission. "Ellie," Walt hissed, "don't." She kept her eyes on Denton. 10 a.m., I'll be there." Denton's smile widened. Victory. Then Ellie added, "With my uncle, and with a lawyer." The air snapped. Denton's smile faltered for the first time all morning. "You can't afford a lawyer." Her voice stayed steady. "We'll find one." Denton leaned in, voice low. "That's cute, but you don't understand. I'm not asking." Ellie met his eyes. "Then stop pretending this is about the law." For a second, Denton's face went still. Then he turned to the tow driver. "Start the paperwork. We'll be back." He took one step away, then stopped and looked over his shoulder. "Tell your biker friends, if they come back here again, I'll make sure you're the one who pays for it." Denton walked to his cruiser. The deputies followed. The tow truck stayed. Walt exhaled shaky. "What did you just do?" Ellie's chest tightened. I bought us time. And then a short message arrived from the number on Hawk's card. One line, do not go to the station. Ellie read the message again like the words might change. Do not go to the station. Because the station was not a conversation. It was a trap. A room with no cameras except Denton's. A place where words got rewritten and signatures got forced. Ellie slid her phone into her pocket. We can't go, she said. Walt's jaw flexed. You told Denton 10 o'clock. I know. I did that to stop him from going to my school. Walt stared. And now you want to break your own promise. It wasn't a promise. It was bait. Walt opened his mouth and shut it, because he understood. In this town, you did not win by being right. You won by not letting Denton choose the field. Ellie typed with shaking thumbs. Where do I go? The reply came fast. Not your house, not school, not station. Go to the only place Denton can't walk in and own the room. Harrington Supply, Ellie said. They've got a front counter security cams customers all morning, and it ties to the nails. Walt's eyes narrowed surprised. That's actually not stupid. Another message landed. Yes, Harrington. You're not going to buy nails. You're going to watch who panics. She stuffed the nails into a small zip bag, kept her fingerprints off them. Then she grabbed the scholarship folder off the kitchen table without thinking, like it was a talisman, shoved it in her backpack. Walt watched her. Why the folder bio? Because if they take everything else, I still want this. They did not leave out the front. Walt cut through the back lot behind the shop past the scrap pile and oil drums to the narrow gravel lane that connected to a side street. Ellie followed, eyes scanning for any car that did not belong. She texted the number. Moving now, back lane. The reply came instantly. Do not drive straight there. Make 2 turns. If you're followed, do not lose them. Let them think they're winning. Walt read it over her shoulder and swore. That's insane. Or it's the only way to find out who it is. They climbed into the pickup. Walt started the engine. As they rolled down the back lane, Ellie looked in the mirror. At first, nothing. Then at the end of the lane, a dark SUV eased into view and stopped just far enough back to pretend it was coincidence. We've got company. Walt's hands tightened on the wheel. You sure? The SUV started rolling, following. Walt made the first turn onto a residential street. The SUV followed, clean and smooth. He made the second turn onto a busier road. The SUV stayed 3 car lengths back. Ellie typed, followed. Dark SUV replied, don't look back again. Go to Harrington. Park where cameras see both lots. Do not walk in together. Ellie goes in first. Walt stays out and watches the SUV, her stomach twisted, split up. Walt's face hardened. No. If we go in together, they'll sit in the lot and wait. If I go in alone, they have to choose. Walt's jaw worked. You're 17, and Denton's coming to my school. Harrington Supply came into view. Wide metal building, contractor yard behind chain link. The front lot was busy. Good witnesses. Walt parked where the cameras would catch both the truck and the entrance. The SUV rolled in 2 rows away. Ellie pushed the door open. She did not run. She did not hesitate. She walked like she belonged there. She felt the SUV's presence on the back of her neck. She reached the glass doors. Behind her, a car door opened. Controlled. Deliberate. She did not turn around. She stepped inside into the fluorescent light and the smell of lumber and metal and coffee. The cashier, a bored woman with a ponytail, looked up. Morning, what can I do for you? Ellie's eyes flicked to the security camera dome above the register. Then the glass doors behind her opened again. A shadow crossed the floor and a voice she did not recognize said close and quiet, Kid, you really should have stayed off Route 12. Ellie did not move. She kept her hands on the counter edge like she was just another customer. The cashier's eyes flicked past her shoulder and her bored expression tightened into polite caution. I'm just here for, don't, the man behind her said. Quiet, close, like he did not need to raise it. She did not turn around. She looked up at the security dome, then at the second camera in the corner. The cashier tried to intervene. Sir, can I help you? The man chuckled once. I'm helping her. The screen in Ellie's pocket lit up. She did not reach for it. Not yet. The man's voice dropped lower. You think this place makes you safe? Cameras don't stop accidents. They just record them. Ellie finally turned her head slightly. Mid-30s, work jacket, clean boots, a ball cap pulled low. His eyes were sharp, calm, like he had done this kind of conversation before. "What do you want?" Ellie asked. The man smiled as if she had asked the wrong question. "What I want is for you to forget what you saw, forget what you found, forget those nails." "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do, and your uncle does." A notification pulsed against her leg. She forced herself to slide it out, thumb only keeping it low. A message from Hawk's number. "Do not engage. Ask for a manager. Say I need help with a bulk roofing nail return. Loud enough for cameras. Do it now." Ellie lifted her chin toward the cashier. "Hey," she said louder now. "I need help with a bulk roofing nail return. Can I speak to a manager?" The man behind her went still, like the word return had pricked him somewhere unexpected. The cashier nodded fast. Yeah, one sec." She hit a button under the counter. The man's smile flattened. "That's cute. You think saying it out loud changes anything?" Ellie kept her voice steady. "I'm returning nails, the kind that got stuck in my tire on Route 12. The man's jaw tightened. There it was. Not anger, not surprise. Recognition. "Watch your mouth." What? Why, because someone here sold them to the wrong person. The man leaned closer. She could smell coffee and something chemical. "Because you're a kid, and kids get hurt when they play grown-up games." The glass doors opened. Two contractors in neon vests walked in laughing. Life continued, and that seemed to frustrate the man more than anything. The phone jumped in her pocket. Another message. "The SUV is moving. Don't leave the counter." From the back, a door opened. A heavy-set man in a Harrington polo emerged. Manager energy, tired eyes, no patience for nonsense, but aware of cameras. "What's going on?" Ellie did not hesitate. "I need to return a bulk bucket of galvanized roofing nails because I found them on Route 12 where someone's been getting tires punctured." The manager's expression shifted from annoyance to calculation. He looked at the cameras, then at the stranger. The stranger smiled. "She's confused. Kid making stories." Another message flashed across the screen. "He's not alone. Look left. Aisle 3. Ellie's eyes slid left. A second man stood near aisle 3 pretending to read labels. Work jacket, same posture, same calm, coordinated. The stranger spoke softly to her. "Now you want to do this in front of these people." He raised his voice. "Listen, man, the kid's got a family shop. She's stressed. My buddy and I are just trying to talk sense into her." The manager's eyes narrowed. "Talk sense into her, how?" "By telling her not to run her mouth." The cashier's eyes widened. The contractors stopped laughing. The manager straightened. "Sir, you're going to step away from my counter." "Or what?" "Or I call the cops." Ellie's insides dropped. The cops meant Denton. Her phone vibrated once. "If Denton shows you lose control." "Don't call the sheriff," Ellie said loud enough for everyone. "Call State Highway Patrol, or call corporate, or call anyone but Denton." "Why push, bum?" "Because Denton's towing is tied to this, and somebody already threatened my school." The room shifted. The stranger's eyes went cold. "You're making a serious accusation." Ellie met his gaze. "So are you." The front doors opened fast. Walt stepped in, breathing hard, eyes locked on Ellie. He stared through the stranger like he could see the shape of the whole thing. Walt's voice cut clean through the store. "Ellie, don't move." The stranger's smile returned thinner. "Uncle Walt, just somebody trying to keep your niece alive." A final message from Hawk's number. "Now look outside." Ellie's eyes snapped to the glass. In the lot, the dark SUV had repositioned, blocking the lane behind Walt's truck. And next to it, parked like it belonged there, was Denton's tow truck. The driver was walking toward the doors, and beside him, badge catching the morning light, walked Sheriff Vernon Denton. The moment Ellie saw Denton in the parking lot, she understood the move. This was not about investigating. It was about taking control of the room. The stranger leaned closer. "See, cameras don't stop anything." The manager glanced toward the entrance and swore under his breath. The screen flashed one more time. "Hawk's number, do not let Denton question you here. He will force a statement on camera. Move to the back aisle now. Ask for the receiving bay." Ellie lifted her voice. Sir, can we talk somewhere private, like your receiving bay? I don't feel safe with them here. The manager hesitated, then made a decision fast the way people do when they realize the wrong authority just walked in. Yeah, this way, move. He pointed down a corridor marked employees only. The stranger shifted, blocking the path. You're not going anywhere, the stranger murmured. Ellie raised her voice so everyone could hear. I'm a minor. I'm asking to move to the receiving bay because I'm being threatened. If anyone touches me, it's on camera. The stranger's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to the camera dome like he had forgotten it existed. The manager's hand came up, palm out. Sir, step back now. The front doors opened. Sheriff Denton entered like he owned the building. The store went quiet. Ellie Granger, Denton called, loud, friendly, practiced. There you are. The manager found his spine. Sheriff, she asked to move to the receiving bay. You can follow us or you can leave. They moved through the employees-only corridor, past stacked boxes of fasteners, shelves of adhesives. The back of the building smelled different. Diesel dust met all, forklifts beeping pallet jacks, workers shouting numbers. The receiving bay opened onto a wide concrete space with loading docks and rolling metal doors. A forklift moved a pallet of 5-gallon buckets across the floor. Ellie's eyes flicked to the labels. Galvanized roofing nails, 50 pounds. Denton positioned himself so Ellie was between him and the two strangers. Now, tell me what you were doing on Route 12 at midnight. Walt started. She doesn't have to, Denton snapped his head. She does if she wants that shop to stay open. Ellie, you're going to tell me who put you up to this. Who told you to come here? Who told you to talk about nails? Denton leaned closer. Because if you don't, I'm walking into your school today. I'm pulling you out of class. And then the stranger behind Ellie spoke. Sheriff, we don't have to scare the kid. We just need her to sign something. Sign. That was the trap, not a conversation. A paper. A statement written for her. The tow driver stepped forward with a folded form on a clipboard. Walt stepped in front of Ellie. No. Denton's eyes hardened. Walt, don't make me arrest you for obstruction. The manager took a step closer. Sheriff, you can't force a minor to sign something in my building. Denton turned on him. You don't know what I can do. And then the big rolling dock door began to lift. Not from inside, from outside. Light spilled under it as it rose. The sound that rolled in was engines, not hundreds, but enough. The Iron Hawks had found them. The first person to step under the rising door was Hawk. Limping jaw-set eyes locked straight on Denton. Behind Hawk, more Iron Hawks filed in, hands visible, spacing clean. Briggs followed, moving like he had measured every angle. Denton recovered fast. This is a private business. You don't get to storm in here. Briggs did not raise his voice. We were invited. The manager blinked. I didn't. Not by you, by corporate. Your security desk called it in the moment a minor said she was being threatened. Denton pointed at Hawk. You, back out now. Hawk took one step forward. I'm not here for you. I'm here for the kid. Denton said, she's in the middle of an investigation. Briggs's eyes sharpened. No, she's in the middle of you trying to force her to sign a statement. Walt's voice rose. Arrest me then. Do it on camera. His manager said, there are cameras in the bay. Audio too. Hawk's gaze cut to Ellie. You okay? They wanted me to sign. Hawk's eyes snapped back to Denton. That's what I thought. Briggs stepped forward. Do it lawfully. No coercion. No threats. Minor has a guardian. Minor requested counsel. He looked at the tow driver. And you are not law enforcement. Put the paper away. The tow driver slowly lowered the clipboard. Hawk reached into his vest and pulled out a clear evidence bag. Inside was a roofing nail. He held it up at chest height for the cameras. This came out of my tire last night, fixed by Ellie Granger on the shoulder of Route 12. Briggs said, we're documenting a pattern of sabotage, and we're documenting the people trying to silence the first civilian who saw it up close. Denton took a step toward Ellie. Give me your phone. Walt's hand shot out. No. Briggs cut in. You're not seizing a minor's phone without probable cause and a warrant. Denton turned and pointed at the two strangers. Who are you employees? The stranger smiled. We were just customers. The manager said, no, you weren't. I've been watching you on the floor cams. You weren't shopping. You were hovering. Hawk took one more step toward Denton. You threatened her school. You threatened her uncle's shop. You tried to make her sign. Denton's lip curled. You're a criminal with a limp. Hawk did not react. Maybe, but I'm not the one hiding behind a badge while people get hurt on Route 12. Briggs said, here's what happens now. You leave. You don't speak to Ellie again without counsel present. And if a single retaliatory inspection hits Granger Auto today, those camera clips go public. And that was when Ellie saw it. The tow driver's clipboard held two forms. One was the statement. The other was a tow authorization. Vehicle to be towed, Granger Auto lift truck. Walt saw it too. His face went pale, then hard. Denton noticed. You think I need your permission to make your day difficult? Hawk turned to the manager. Call Highway Patrol, not the sheriff. Tell them you have evidence of sabotage on a state route and coercion of a minor on camera. The manager reached for his radio. Janice, call Highway Patrol, now. The stranger shifted toward a side exit. Ellie saw it. He's leaving, she said loud. Every head turned. The stranger froze. Hawk stepped into his path. You already told the kids she should have stayed off Route 12. The stranger's eyes flicked to Denton, and Denton looked away, just for a fraction. But everyone in that base saw it. The manager spoke into his radio again. Janice Highway Patrol, tell them I need a supervisor on scene. The stranger clicked a key fob. Outside, the SUV's engine turned over. He darted sideways, slipping around Hawk's bad leg. Hawk reached out and caught only fabric. The stranger sprinted toward the dock opening and hit the daylight. Briggs moved to the dock edge. Plates. A Hawk near the bikes lifted his phone, tracking the SUV. The tow driver bolted too, not toward the dock, toward a side corridor. Walt shouted, he's running too. Denton spun. For a heartbeat, he looked like he might chase the tow driver. Then he did not. He watched the man go, just like he had looked away for the stranger. Ellie felt something snap into clarity. Denton was not trying to stop anything. He was trying to control what got seen. Briggs turned toward Ellie. You can't go back to the shop. Not yet. Walt's voice broke. He's going to tow our lift truck. Denton pointed at Ellie one last time. This is what you wanted. You just lit a match. Ellie met his eyes. No, you did. Denton's smile returned thin and desperate. Fine, then watch what burns first. He turned and walked out, fast enough to look like retreat without admitting it. The moment Denton was gone, a new message arrived from the unknown local number. A single photo, Granger Auto's front bay, smoke curling out from under the door, and one line, too late. Ellie did not remember crossing the Harrington lot. She remembered the taste of metal in her mouth. Walt's hand crushing her shoulder as they ran. Hawk's voice behind them, sharp, controlled, telling Hawks to stay with the manager, stay with the cameras, keep the footage safe. They hit the truck. Walt tore the door open. The engine roared. Tires chirped as Walt yanked them out of the lot. Walt's knuckles were white on the wheel. Call 911. If it's Denton, call fire, not the sheriff. She called. Her hands kept slipping. She choked out the address. Walt cut onto Mill Road and her insides dropped before she even saw it. The smoke was real. A thick gray ribbon curled from under the bay door of Granger Auto. The neon sign flickered weakly in daylight. Two neighbors stood in the road filming. A third held a garden hose spraying useless water at the seam of the door. Walt slammed the truck into the gravel and jumped out before it stopped. Ellie, stay. Ellie was already out. Heat hit her first, then the smell, burning rubber, hot oil, melting plastic. She ran toward the bay door and grabbed the handle. Walt tackled her sideways. No, you open that, it flashes. She fought him for a second, pure animal panic. Then her eyes focused on the smoke pulsing in thick breaths. Flash over. Walt was right. The scholarship folder was in her backpack, still in the truck. Thank God. But everything else, permits, inspection reports, receipts, was in that office, being eaten alive. A siren rose in the distance. Fire, not police. Across the street, a woman yelled, "Who did this?" And nobody answered, because everyone knew. The fire engine arrived before they could think. It hit the corner of Mill Road while Ellie was still standing in the gravel, with her hands shaking and the smell of smoke thickening in the air. Men in gear were already moving before the truck stopped. They pulled hoses. They forced the side door rather than the bay. Walt stood beside her, hands hanging at his sides like they had forgotten what they were for. His face was gray, something past anger and sadness both. And then Sheriff Vernon Denton's cruiser rolled into view and slowed. Denton did not get out right away. He sat watching the fire like a man watching a clock reach the time he wanted. Then he stepped out and walked toward the crowd. "Everyone back. Give the firefighters room." Walt turned on him, face raw. "You stay away from us." Denton's eyes slid to Ellie. "Tragic. Electrical probably." Ellie's teeth clenched. Walt grabbed her shoulder. "Don't." Denton said, "Now, about that inspection." The rumble came before the bikes appeared. Hawk's Harley rolled up behind Denton's cruiser, followed by Briggs and 4 others. Hawk parked, killed the engine, and limped forward with a phone already recording. Briggs said, "Sheriff Denton, this property was targeted less than an hour after you threatened retaliation on camera. That's a fact." Denton scoffed. "You don't know that?" Hawk lifted his phone. "We do, because we've got your face on Harrington's receiving bay audio saying you'd make something burn first." Briggs continued, "Highway Patrol is already en route. They're going to want to speak with you about why your tow driver ran and why a civilian looked to you before fleeing." Ellie's phone carried one final message from the unknown number. "You could have been quiet." She stared at the screen. Her hands stopped shaking. Not because she was not afraid, but because something in her finally settled into place. Quiet had never been safety. Quiet had been submission. She raised the phone screen out and showed it to Briggs. Briggs nodded. "Save it. Screenshot it. Forward it to the patrol contact when they arrive." Denton reached for the phone. The fire captain stepped between them. "Sheriff, I need you off my scene. You're in the way." Then another vehicle pulled up, unmarked, clean. 2 troopers in tan stepped out. Highway Patrol. One trooper looked at the burning bay, then at Ellie, then at Denton. "Sheriff Denton, we need to speak with you about a state route sabotage investigation, potential interference, and an incident recorded at Harrington's Supply involving a minor." Denton straightened. "This is my county." The trooper's expression did not change. "This is a state route." And for the first time all morning, Denton did not have a ready line. Walt stood beside Ellie silent. 30 years of work burning because his niece had stopped to help a stranger. No. Burning because someone decided that helping a stranger was a threat to their business. Briggs lowered his voice. "You did the right thing, even if it cost you." Ellie's voice came out raw. "Right doesn't rebuild walls." Hawk said no, but it rebuilds leverage, and leverage rebuilds everything else. The troopers began asking Denton questions. Precise. Dates, times, why his tow truck was at Harrington, why a tow authorization existed for Granger Auto Equipment. Denton tried to talk over them, tried to redirect. They did not bite. Ellie realized that Denton was not powerful because he was smart. He was powerful because nobody had ever made him answer questions he could not bully away. Now he was answering them in front of witnesses. Hours later, when the fire was finally dead and the bay door was cut open, the inside looked like a bomb had gone off in slow motion. Charred shelves, melted plastic. The computer reduced to a black shell. Tools warped by heat. The invoice binder on Walt's desk was ash. The inspection certificates were gone. The permits were gone. Years of paper that said this place exists and has a right to exist reduced to carbon and memory. But the lift still stood. Black and scarred, one hydraulic line melted away, paint bubbled off in long strips, but the frame was upright. 4 posts driven into concrete holding. Nothing supporting, nothing but standing. Like a skeleton that refused to fall. Walt walked into the bay, slowly, boots crunching on debris that had been his life 24 hours ago. He stopped in the center, turned a full circle, and his face crumbled. Not all at once, in pieces. The jaw first, then the eyes, then the forehead. "We're finished," he whispered. Ellie's voice came out raw. "No." Walt turned, eyes bloodshot. For the first time since she was 9 years old, Ellie saw her uncle as a man who might break. Not from weakness, from exhaustion. "Ellie," he said, and her name sounded like a surrender. "They wanted us finished," Ellie said. "That's different." Walt wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Different how?" "Because we're still here, and they're the ones answering questions." The fire investigator, a woman in a county jacket, emerged and spoke to the trooper. Ellie caught fragments. Accelerant. Point of origin near the electrical panel, but inconsistent with electrical failure. Deliberate. The trooper walked to Denton and said something. Denton's face went rigid, not angry, afraid. The trooper spoke louder. "Sheriff Denton, we're going to need you to come to our office for a formal interview. Today." Denton's voice was tight. "I'm cooperating fully." "Good. Then you won't mind if we also speak with Barrett Toomey." The name landed like a stone dropped into still water. Barrett Toomey, Denton's brother-in-law, the man who ran the towing yard. The man whose county contract depended on breakdowns happening often enough to justify the fleet. Denton's face changed, a flicker of something that looked like a man watching a domino begin to tip. "Barrett's got nothing to do with this." The trooper looked at him the way professionals look at people who have just told them exactly where to dig. "We'll determine that." Briggs walked up to Ellie and Walt and held out a folded document. Printed clean, a contract proposal. "Temporary workspace. One of our members owns a warehouse 2 towns over. Legitimate lease. Short term. Enough to keep you operating while insurance and investigations move." Walt blinked. "We can't," Hawk cut in. "You can, because it's not a gift, it's payment." "You saved my life last night," Hawk said. "You just didn't see it yet." Walt looked at Ellie. Ellie thought of the texts, the threats, Denton's smile, the town's silence. Then she looked at the blackened lift that still stood. "We take it," she said. Walt's eyes widened. "Ellie, we take it. We rebuild. And we don't owe Denton our fear." Walt's shoulders sagged. Then he nodded. Small, broken, but real. The formal statement happened 3 days later at the Highway Patrol office. A clean room with a table, a camera, and a trooper who asked questions like, "A surgeon makes cuts." Ellie sat with Walt beside her and a lawyer across the table. The lawyer was a woman named Hargrove, who worked legal aid and had driven 40 minutes because she heard about the case and decided it was worth her gas. Ellie told the story from the beginning. The trooper listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked one question. "The text from the unknown local number. You saved all of them." Ellie nodded and slid her phone across the table. "We've subpoenaed the phone records," the trooper said. "The number traces to a prepaid phone purchased at a convenience store. But the purchase was made with a credit card." "Who's at Barrett Toomey's?" The name cracked through the room. Walt's hands went still on the table. The trooper continued. "We've also pulled purchasing records from Harrington Supply. 6 bulk purchases of galvanized roofing nails in the past 4 months. All on the same contractor account. Registered to Toomey Construction Services, a subsidiary of Toomey's towing operation. Not Denton buying the nails. Toomey. Denton was the shield. Toomey was the hand. We believe Mr. Toomey orchestrated the sabotage on Route 12 to generate towing revenue. Sheriff Denton provided protection, suppressed complaints, and used his position to intimidate anyone who noticed the pattern. The 2 men who confronted you at Harrington Supply have been identified as employees of Toomey Construction. One has agreed to cooperate." The shape of it was so simple, it was almost insulting. "Scatter nails, wait for blowouts, send the tow trucks, charge the fees, squeeze out small shops, use the sheriff to keep everyone quiet." And it had worked, until a 17-year-old girl stopped on a highway shoulder and decided that a stranger's life was worth her last plug. "Barrett Toomey was arrested this morning," the trooper said. "The news moved through the town the way news moves in small towns. Not through headlines first, but through kitchen tables and gas station conversations. Denton was placed on administrative leave. His badge was collected. His cruiser was parked. His name was spoken in past tense by deputies who had spent years looking the other way. Toomey's arrest was louder. Troopers at his towing yard at 6 in the morning. The county contract was suspended. The fleet sat idle behind chain link. The 2 men from Harrington Supply were identified as Toomey employees. One flipped within 24 hours. He gave dates, routes, quantities of nails, names of drivers who scattered them from truck beds at 2 in the morning. He gave them Toomey's voice on a recorded phone call saying, "Make sure Route 12 stays busy." The evidence was ordinary. Receipts, phone logs, GPS data from tow trucks that arrived at breakdown sites faster than any dispatcher could have sent them because the dispatchers had not sent them. The trucks were already waiting. Toomey was charged with racketeering, criminal sabotage, arson, and conspiracy. Denton was charged separately. Misconduct in office, obstruction, conspiracy, witness intimidation. The Harrington manager testified. The fire captain testified. The cashier with the ponytail testified. Even the older deputy, the one with tired eyes, testified. He described years of looking the other way and the specific morning he decided he could not do it anymore. Toomey was convicted on all counts. Denton pleaded to reduce charges and lost his badge, his pension, and his freedom for 18 months. The county contract for towing was dissolved and opened to competitive bidding for the first time in a decade. Route 12 was resurfaced that spring. The state installed reflective markers and added lighting to the stretch where the nails had been scattered. Every time Ellie drove past the new lights on her way home from school, she thought about the dark shoulder where she had knelt with a flashlight and a plug kit and decided that a stranger's life was worth stopping for. The county held a public meeting about the towing contract 3 weeks after Toomey's conviction. The meeting was in the high school gymnasium, folding chairs, bad lighting, the kind of civic event that usually drew 12 people. This time the gym was full. The board listened to testimony from truckers who had been towed on Route 12 and charged triple the standard rate, from families who had blown tires and waited hours for help that came with a bill they could not afford, from a woman whose husband had crashed his motorcycle on a nail and spent 3 weeks in the hospital and nobody had told her it might not have been an accident. When the testimony was over, the board chair asked if anyone else wished to speak. Silence. Then Walt stood up. Ellie watched her uncle walk to the microphone, and she saw something she had never seen before. Walt Granger, the man who communicated in silences and invoice calculations, standing in front of 200 people with his hands steady and his voice clear. My name is Walt Granger. I run Granger Auto on Mill Road. Some of you know me, most of you don't. That's fine. I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me. The gym was quiet. My shop was burned down because my niece fixed a tire on Route 12. That's what started all this. A 17-year-old girl stopped on a highway shoulder at midnight because somebody needed help. She didn't ask who he was. She didn't ask what he could do for her. She just fixed it. Walt paused. His throat worked. I raised that girl, and I'm standing here today because she's braver than I ever was. I kept my head down for years. I paid my permits. I passed my inspections. I kept quiet when the sheriff told me to keep quiet, and I thought that was survival. He looked at the board. It wasn't. It was just a slower way to lose. Walt stepped away from the microphone and walked back to his seat. Ellie put her hand on his arm, and Walt covered it with his own, and they sat like that while the board voted unanimously to open the towing contract to competitive bidding and to establish an independent oversight committee for Route 12 maintenance. It was not justice. Justice was a word for courtrooms. It was something smaller and more useful. It was a town deciding too late, but not never, that silence had a cost they were no longer willing to pay. Granger Auto reopened on Mill Road 8 months after the fire. Not the temporary warehouse, the original location. Rebuilt, insurance covered the structure, but insurance does not cover the hours. It does not cover the nights Walt spent on the phone with adjusters who asked him to prove that a burned wrench was worth replacing. It does not cover the weeks of paperwork that felt like fighting the fire all over again, except this time the fire was bureaucratic and burned slower and never quite went out. The community covered the rest. A neighbor who was an electrician rewired the bay for free. A contractor donated drywall. The woman with the casserole organized a tool drive that collected enough wrenches, sockets, and ratchets to fill 2 rolling cabinets. She posted it on a community page with 3 sentences and no drama, and within a week, people Ellie had never met were dropping off tools at the warehouse. Walt accepted each donation with the same quiet nod. He did not make speeches. He wrote notes by hand on cards he bought at the dollar store, and Ellie found him at the kitchen table one night, writing them with the same concentration he used for invoices, except his eyes were wet and the pen moved slower. The Ironhawks contributed too, but not the way people expected. No ceremony, no banner. Briggs arranged for the lift to be professionally refurbished, the hydraulic system rebuilt to code. It arrived on a flatbed on a Tuesday, and 2 Hawks helped Walt bolt it down without saying much. When they were done, one shook Walt's hand and said, "Good shop." That was it. The new sign went up on a Saturday. Granger Auto, same name, same crooked font because Ellie insisted. Walt wanted something cleaner. Ellie said no. She wanted it to look like them. Imperfect, stubborn, still standing. Walt hung the sign himself on a ladder older than Ellie while she held the base and pretended not to notice that his hands were shaking. When it was level, he climbed down and stood beside her in the gravel yard. "It's crooked," he said. "It was always crooked," Ellie said. Walt put his hand on her shoulder, not heavy, just there, the weight of a man who had carried everything alone for 8 years and was learning slowly that the girl he raised could carry some of it back. The first customer pulled in 20 minutes later. A woman with a minivan and a noise she described as kind of a clunky whoosh thing. Ellie put it on the lift, found a worn CV joint, and quoted the repair. The woman said yes without hesitating, not because the price was low, but because she had seen the news and she wanted to bring her car to the shop that did not quit. By the end of the first week, the schedule was full. Hawk stopped by once alone on a Tuesday afternoon. He rode in without a crowd behind him, just a single Harley turning off the road and rolling into the gravel lot with the engine ticking down to silence. He walked the temporary shop without commenting on the size or the cold. He looked at the lift blackened but standing bolted to its new floor and nodded once. "Looks right." Ellie was under a Honda Civic replacing brake pads. She slid out on the creeper and looked up at him. His leg was still stiff, but he moved with less pain now. The limp had settled into something permanent part of his walk rather than an interruption of it, a wound that had become a feature. "How's the tire?" she asked. Hawk almost smiled, almost. "Replaced it. The plug held until I got to a shop." "Good." He set a small box on the workbench. Plain cardboard, no label. Ellie wiped her hands and opened it. Inside was a set of tire plugs, professional grade, the kind that cost more than her entire kit. "Don't burn through these on strangers," Hawk said. "No promises." Hawk held her gaze for a second, and something passed between them that did not need words. The understanding that certain people are built to stop on dark highways, and no amount of fire or threats will rewire that impulse. It was not bravery, it was architecture. The way some buildings are designed to stand in storms. "Your scholarship," Hawk said. "You get it. Interviews next week. You'll do fine." "You don't know that?" "Yeah, I do, because you're the kid who fixed a tire on Route 12 at midnight and didn't take a dime. If that's not enough for a scholarship, nothing is." He turned and walked to the bay door. His boots made a sound on the concrete that was heavier on one side than the other. He paused. "Ellie." She looked up. "When 500 bikes showed up at dawn, your town thought it was a threat." Ellie did not answer. Hawk nodded once. "It was. To the people who thought nobody would ever fight back." He walked to his Harley, swung a leg over carefully, and started the engine. The rumble was low and steady, the sound of something reliable, and it faded down the road until the warehouse was quiet again. The scholarship interview happened on a Wednesday in a conference room at the State Technical College. 3 interviewers behind a table. Ellie in a chair that squeaked every time she shifted. She wore the cleanest clothes she owned, which still smelled faintly of brake cleaner because some smells do not wash out. They asked about her experience. She told them about Granger Auto. One bay, one lift, one uncle who taught her everything by making her do it wrong first, so she would understand why right mattered. They asked about challenges. She told them about the fire. Not all of it, just the fire, the rebuilt shop, the 9 days between losing everything and opening again. One interviewer, a woman with reading glasses and kind eyes, leaned forward. "What did you learn from that experience?" Ellie sat with the question the way Walt sat with invoices. Patient, thorough, unwilling to give an answer that was not true. "I learned that the people who want you to quit don't actually need you to fail," Ellie said. "They just need you to believe you already have." The room went quiet. The interviewer wrote something down and looked up. "Thank you, Miss Granger." The letter came 3 weeks later. Ellie was elbow deep in a transmission rebuild when Walt walked into the bay holding an envelope like it might explode. His face was strange. Not happy, not sad. Somewhere in between. "It's from the college," he said. Ellie wiped her hands on a rag dirtier than her hands. She took the envelope. It was thin. She opened it standing up because sitting down felt like admitting she was afraid. Full scholarship, technical automotive program. 4 years, tuition, books, housing. She read it twice. Then a third time because the words kept blurring and she realized it was not the print. It was her eyes. Walt took the letter and read it himself. His lips moved slightly the way they did when he was adding numbers, except he was not adding anything. He was just reading. Then he set the letter on the workbench next to the box of tire plugs Hawk had left and pulled Ellie into a hug so tight it hurt. He did not say, "I'm proud of you." He did not say, "You deserve this." He said, "Your dad would have lost his mind." And that was the thing that broke her open. Not the scholarship, not the fire, not the threats or the sheriff, or the 500 bikes or the nails on Route 12. Her father, the man who died on a scaffold when she was 9, the man who never got to see her hold a wrench. Ellie cried into Walt's shoulder, and Walt held her, and the lift hummed behind them, and outside the bay door the road stretched toward a horizon that looked for the first time like it led somewhere. Ellie worked afternoons and weekends fitting the shop around her classes. Walt worked mornings. They hired a part-time helper, a quiet kid from the vocational school who reminded Ellie of herself 2 years ago. Nervous hands, good eyes, the kind of person who noticed things other people missed. On a Friday evening in late spring, Ellie was closing up alone. She swept the bay, checked the locks, and stepped outside into the warm air. Mill Road was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to feel like neglect but now felt like peace. A few houses had their porch lights on. A dog barked somewhere. The sky was turning purple at the edges. She pulled the bay door down and locked it. She stood in the gravel yard for a moment looking at the sign. Granger Auto. The letters glowed faintly in the dusk, the neon not quite bright enough to compete with daylight, but stubborn enough to keep trying. Her phone lit up. A text from the scholarship office. Reminder about a summer internship application. She typed a quick reply and pocketed the phone. Then she heard it. Low, distant. The rumble of a motorcycle on Route 12 somewhere past the tree line headed south. Just one. Not a fleet, not a formation. A single rider on a dark road going wherever the night took him. Ellie listened until the sound faded into the hum of insects and the settling of the old building behind her. She did not know if it was Hawk. She did not need to know. She got in the pickup, started the engine, and drove home. The road was clear. The shoulder was empty. And in her glove box next to the flashlight and the tire plugs sat a card with a phone number and no name. Someone who answers. Ellie had not called the number since the morning everything burned. She did not need to. But she kept the card the way you keep a match in your pocket even when the fire is out. Not because you want to start one, because you know what it means to survive one.